is your everyday typical picture of a large family on a red couch in the middle of a big open field. And that is me at the bottom, under 700 pounds, of my 3 daughters, my 2 sons, and my really smart wife, who was smart enough to be at the top of the pile, not the bottom. If you look very closely at that picture of my face, you can see all the blood vessels in my head popping. That's a lot of people. So I am a father of 5, and of all the jobs that I've ever had, I think being a dad is my favorite. So because this is a webinar about discovering your why, it would be remiss of me to not tell you my own. My own why is that I believe there is greatness inside every single person. That is a non-negotiable, unshakable belief that I have. But I've also discovered that more often than not, each of us is the single biggest reason why we don't achieve it. It's not what's going on around me. It's me and my ability to overcome that. It's usually me holding me back. And I've discovered that it's a pretty common thing out there. So I'll talk a little bit more about how I use my why in my business to be able to give you an example of how you can use yours in your business. But that's enough about me. I want to start with what we're going to cover today. We're going to start with a story because everyone loves stories. And then we'll talk about why we buy anything. Then we'll look at how to discover your own why. And then after you've discovered it, which you very likely won't do on this call, but once you discover it on your own, how do you leverage it? What the heck do you do with it to grow a business? And that's our agenda for today. So with that said, grab a cup of coffee, grab a mat, and circle up because it's story time. I want to tell you a story of a recent conversation that I had, a business conversation with a licensed massage therapist. So we got together for a cup of coffee, really just to learn about each other's businesses. And in the course of that, I got to hear about this new business that she's starting here in the Portland metro area where I live and work. So I listened, and I'm always fascinated by what people do and how they do it and why they do it. So we got to the end of her facts and figures about her business, and I asked her, I said, okay, so here in the Portland metro area, within a 20-mile radius of where you live and work, how many other licensed massage therapists would you say there are? She thought about it for a second, and she said, you know, probably about 1,000, which, to be honest, blew me away, way more than I thought there would be. That's a lot. So I said, okay, so if someone were to call you out of the blue and say, why should I come see you over the other 999, what would you tell them? She said, well, the first thing I would tell them is that the technique that I use, the massage technique and style that I use is very different. It's pretty rare. Only about 5% of licensed massage therapists use the same technique that I use. I thought about it, and I almost didn't know how to say it. I said, please don't be offended by this, but I don't know that the person who's calling you and asking you about why they should come see you really cares about the technique that you use. Maybe other licensed massage therapists are interested in that, but the person who's calling you because her body hurts or because he's looking for that escape from reality kind of experience, does he really care about the technique that you use? Or really, are they just looking to know that when they come to see you, they're going to have a great experience and they're going to leave feeling wonderful? And she said, yeah, okay, you're right. She said, you know, when I think about it, even my existing clients don't always know the kind of style that I use, the technique that I use, and really that's not why they come. They come because of the experience. I said, okay, so back to the original question, why should someone come to see you over the other 999 that are within a 20-mile radius of where you work? So she thought about it, and she squinted her eyes and said, well, okay, the first thing is the human body fascinates me. It's like a puzzle. She said, I love trying to figure out where your pain is originating from instead of where you're actually feeling it. She said, so like your knee might be hurting, but it might actually be originating in your shoulder, and that fascinates me, and I like figuring that out for you. So the second thing is I really work to connect with people, and I create a warm place where people can just come and they can relax and just feel accepted. And the third thing, she said, I'm really passionate about relieving people's chronic pain so that they can get back to living. They can get back to doing the things that they love to do, that very often I find people have given up doing because it's just too painful. I said, oh, that's really cool. That's interesting. How many of the other 999 do the same things? How many of them are fascinated by the human body? And how many of them create a warm place where people can relax and feel accepted? And how many of them aspire to remove their clients' chronic pain? And she kind of lowered her head because I think she was getting the point. And she said, all of them. And so the question is, for you, the first takeaway question that I have for you today is, how are you different from every other business that does what you do in the market that you do it in? Because if you can't answer that question for yourself, then how can you possibly expect to answer it when someone calls you out of the blue and says, why should I buy from you over every other business that's within driving distance of you if you're a physical location? Or even worse, if you're an internet location, why should I buy from you over every other possibility that's out there within the comfort of my own home? Now, I'll give you a hint. The answer lies in your why. And that's why I led with that story, and that's why discovering your why, I think, is absolutely critical to really thriving and running a successful business. So grab your chairs, because now we can talk about why we buy. The National Association of Sales Professionals, which is the largest sales organization in the world, says that there are only two reasons why people buy anything. Everything we buy falls under these two reasons, and that is to avoid pain or loss and to gain pleasure. Everything, even something as benign as paying your electric bill. Why do you do that? Well, because you have to. Well, yeah, but if you think about it, you pay your electric bill because you want to avoid the pain of sitting in a cold, dark house. Or you love the pleasure of being connected to all of your electronic devices. So everything, when you really think about it, everything falls under those two categories: avoiding pain or loss or gaining pleasure. So in your business, the sale is only made after you've convinced somebody that the product or service you have will help them gain pleasure or avoid pain or loss, and not a second before. So your second takeaway question is, as a result of doing business with you, what pain or loss will your clients avoid, or what pleasure will they gain? Because the key learning is that pain and loss and pleasure are emotional motivators. They're not logical. But so many of our elevator speeches, so many of our marketing and our sales material avoids this. We ignore the fact that we've got to tap into the pain, loss, and pleasure centers of the people that we're trying to sell to. So our elevator pitch looks something like this. We give people information. So we tell them about our company, or we tell them about our costs, or the prices, or the products, or the benefits and the features. And all of that is 100% true, and no one really cares. The fact is that if you give people that information, then what you're doing is you're encouraging them, you're telling them that they need to make the buying decision logically. That's what happens. When you give them information, you escort your clients to their brain where the logical buying decision is made. Why? Because that's the information that you've given them. But that means that in order for you to win their business, you're going to have to win the logical buy sweepstakes. And that looks like this. They're going to do comparative shopping. They're going to compare your company to the other companies. They're going to compare your prices to the other prices. They're going to compare your products to the other products. And unless you're sure that you're going to win that comparison every single time, or at least enough to have a successful business, then that's really not where you want to be selling. You want to be selling in the emotional part, that tapping into that pleasure and pain center. Forget about the benefits, forget about the features, forget about the product information. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't give people that information, but I'm saying you don't lead with it. The fact is, when you tap into the emotional center, when you become an emotional buy, that's the goal. When you become an emotional buy, people don't actually care about your features. They don't care about your costs. They don't care about the they almost don't even care about the quality. They don't care about the actual quality because in their mind, the perceived benefits far outweigh the actual. So if you tap into the emotional center, then you don't need to tell them those other things. They're going to attribute your business higher on the list than everybody else. Think about the Google rankings. In their mind, you're coming out higher than all of the other businesses. And this is the great part about it. If you really connect with somebody emotionally, they're going to attribute you higher without even doing all of that comparative shopping. People don't want to shop around. They don't want to look around. So when you connect with them emotionally in the pleasure and pain center, then they're going to stop looking and they're just going to assume that you are the only company out there that can meet their needs. How do we know this to be true? Because how often do you spend as much as $4 on a 16-ounce cup of coffee that you can make at home for 32 cents? We do this all the time. You have your favorite coffee shop, and you go there because the experience that you have is worth the $4. You don't even think about the fact that it's 12 times the cost of what you could make at home, but it's an emotional buy. So the critical outcome of connecting with people first, instead of leading with your products and your features and your benefits, if you connect with them first, the critical outcome is that they'll assign a higher perceived value to your company and your features and your prices and your quality and your products because of it. So here's your next takeaway question. Do your customers see you as a logical buy, or do they see you as an emotional buy? And how do you know? And if you're not an emotional buy, how do you become an emotional buy? Well, that's what we're going to talk about next, how to become an emotional buy. Now, I want to make this point, that being an emotional buy is not the same as being an impulse buy. That's not at all what we're talking about, because impulse buys are very often unnecessary, and they're purchases that we regret later. Think about that candy bar that you buy because it's right there in front of you in the grocery store. You pick it up because of some promise that you feel like it's going to give you in the moment. You eat that candy bar, and very often there's regret later on, whether it's the regret of eating it or the regret of wasting the dollar, whatever it happens to be. An emotional buy is something that we see as a reward. How often in your life do you find yourself regretting that $4 cup of coffee that you really enjoyed? Almost never. And that's what we're trying to help you become, is an emotional buy, not an impulse buy. If you want to become an emotional buy, it's really very simple. It really is very simple. It's only 2 steps. The first thing that you have to do is you have to paint a vivid and emotionally compelling vision of how your product or service will deliver your customers from pain or loss, or bring them a really pleasurable experience. We'll talk about how you do that, but that's what you're trying to accomplish. When you can paint a vivid and emotionally compelling vision of how you're tapping into the pleasure and pain, that's how you become an emotional buy. What separates you from an impulse buy is the second thing that you have to do, which is after you sell that vision, then you have to deliver on the promise. If you don't deliver on the promise, then people regret buying you and you're an impulse buy. If you do that, if you do those 2 things, if you paint a vivid and emotionally compelling vision, and then you follow up and you deliver on that experience for that person, if what they bought is actually what you deliver, everyone will know about it. They will tell everybody because it's a great experience for them. Not a good experience, a great experience for them. The problem is, if you don't do that second step, if you sell a vivid and emotionally compelling vision of some great experience and then you don't come through, everyone will know about it. And that will short-circuit your business. That will catch up to you, and before you know it, no one will buy from you. So, if this is all it takes to become an emotional buy, which is our goal, how do you paint a vivid and emotionally compelling vision of how your products and services will deliver your customers from pain or loss, or bring them an experience that is pleasurable? And much like the hint I gave you in that first question, the answer comes from your why. So let's talk about what is a why. Let's talk about what's a why, where does it come from, and how do you find it? Now, a lot of people attribute this quote to Mark Twain. I actually have looked, and I have yet to find that Mark Twain said it or wrote it anywhere, but we all attribute it to Mark Twain anyway. So Mark Twain is thought to have said that the two most important days in your life are the day you are born and the day you discover why, the day you find out why. So a why is your purpose. It's your reason for existence. It's your why is at the very core of who you are, and it's likely been driving your thoughts and your actions and your desires and your likes and your dislikes for a really long time, whether you've known it or not. It's that thing that brings you the most satisfaction when you're doing it, and it's that thing that brings you the most frustration and the most dissatisfaction when you're not. So if that's what a why is, where does it come from? Well, I have to tell you, after having really become passionate about discovering your why and helping people find it and finding my own, I honestly quite simply believe it is hardwired into your DNA. That it is the essence of who you are. It's what you believe. It's why you love some things, why you hate some things. It's how you're wired. It's how you're driven to behave as a result of all of that. It's that I believe that you are uniquely wired with your why, and you are uniquely gifted to live out and walk out and execute on your why in a way that no one else can, because they're flat out not wired like you, and it's not their why. So I say this because when I've seen people have said, that's a really cool why, I want that to be my why, it just doesn't work because it's not yours, and you're not wired that way, and you're not gifted to walk out and execute on that why. So I really do. If somebody proves me otherwise, I'm going with this, that it is hardwired into your DNA, which means the good news is, as long as you have DNA, you have a why. So if you've wondered, well, I have no idea what my why is, well, trust me, you have one. So let's all just agree that you have one. How do you find it? Well, it's not easy. The fact is that it requires a lot of effort. It requires a lot of dedication and commitment, because you really have to peel back the layers and examine, why do you do what you do? Why do you enjoy certain things? Why don't you enjoy other things? What drives you? What motivates you? It requires sometimes getting silent, getting quiet, and really thinking. It requires a lot of self-reflection. Why do I do certain things? Why does this drive me nuts? Why do I get so passionate about that? Why do I not care about that? And sometimes how you find your why requires a little bit of guidance. Now, whether that's a friend, whether it's a trusted advisor, whether it's whoever that happens to be, guidance just looks like somebody who can listen to you and who can be present with you and hear what you're saying, but also hear what you're not saying, and ask the additional questions and say, okay, good, I hear that. Tell me more about this, or tell me why. Now, there are a lot of questions that I use when I work with my clients to help them discover their why. For the sake of time, I'm going to give you my top 5. I'm going to give you the 5 questions that I use the most. Recognize, though, it's when you answer these 5 questions, you're really just starting to scratch the surface. You're not going to arrive at your why at the end of these 5 questions, but they're great starting points. So I'm going to give them to you now. First one, what brings you the greatest amount of joy and satisfaction, and why? What is it that drives you? What is it that motivates you? When do you feel most at peace? Second question, what brings you the greatest amount of anger and frustration, and why? It's the same question from the opposite perspective. What drives you nuts? What makes you crazy? What routinely brings out the strongest emotion in you? I always describe it this way. What gets you from 0 to 100 in no time flat? That you can be having a great day and you witness something, or you hear something, or you experience something, and bam, you're right there. You're like, where did that come from? What is that thing? Fourth question, what belief that you have is simply unshakable or unchangeable despite all evidence to the contrary, and why? So I go back to my why. I mentioned that my why is I have this unshakable belief that there is greatness inside every single person. That's a non-negotiable. you could actually put scientific proof in front of me on the table that said, actually, we found a group of people, or we found one person who is born without greatness. And you know what? I would say your data's wrong, check it again. Because I don't care about the scientific evidence. I don't care about your empirical proof. Here's what I know. I just know it. I just know that there is greatness inside everybody, even the worst possible human being. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not making bad choices. That doesn't mean that they've done a lot of bad things that they don't need to be accountable for, but I am just convinced there's greatness in there. So what is that belief that you have that no one can shake, and why? And then the last question, is there a role that you continue to take on over and over? What do you find yourself doing or in over and over and over, even when you're not trying to? And it doesn't have to be a formal role like president of a board of directors or volunteer on a fundraising committee. It could be, what role do you play in your relationships? What are you, the peacekeeper? Are you the encourager? What role is that you find yourself in over and over and over, even when no one's asking you to, but there's a need and you just fill it, and why? Now, the most important part of every one of these questions is the final two words. I'm assuming you saw the pattern by now, and why? Because it's not enough to know the answer to the question. You have to know why. You got to know why. Why is that important? Not just what's important to me, but why does that matter? I'll give you an example. This is the first question I threw up there. What brings you the greatest amount of joy and satisfaction, and why? The four most common answers that I get when I ask this question, and maybe it's one of your answers. If you took a second and said, you know what, here's my answer, I got it. The four most common answers that I get are justice, equality, law, fairness. Everything kind of falls under justice. Money. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. These are not good or bad answers. They're just answers. Family, hugely important to a lot of people. And then, believe it or not, the number one answer that I get to this question is helping people. That's what brings me the greatest amount of joy and satisfaction, is helping people. Now, those are all great answers, but none of those is a why. You can't say, well, my why is money, and I'm here to help you money. It's like, well, why do these matter to you? For instance, with family, what is it about family that is so important to you that you're willing to sacrifice your career, or you're willing to sacrifice perhaps the size of your house or the stuff that you have? Why does family take precedence for you? If it's justice, why would you care about somebody on the other side of the universe that you're never going to meet? Why do you care if they get justice or not? If it's money, is it having money? Is it saving money? Is it spending money? Is it giving money away? What is it about money that you enjoy, and why? What is the experience that does for you? And the same thing with helping people. We all love to help people. That's why you have a business, is you want to help people, especially people who do business with you. So you want to help them. Why is helping people important to you? Because every question has an answer, and every answer begets another question. Every time you answer a question and then follow up with and why, answer that question and then say, okay, now why is that important to me? Why is that important to me? Each time you do that, you get one step closer to finding your why. So discovering your why is not going to happen on this call. It's going to have to be done outside of this call with, as I said, work and commitment and effort and dedication and self-reflection. Here's my encouragement to you: don't give up, don't quit. Because I've actually met people who have become so frustrated by their inability to find it that they simply quit, they give up. They come to to me, like a ridiculous conclusion that they just don't have one. And that's crazy. So the simple truth is, you've lived your whole life this long with a why right under your nose, and it's been guiding your thoughts and your behaviors for years and years and years, and you never really thought about it until recently. So it's going to take you a little bit of time to name it. Don't give up. Likewise, don't give up so easily thinking that you found it either, because you'll know it when you know it. In other words, if you think you found your why but you're not really sure, then you haven't found it, because you'll know it when you know it. I have met people who have told me, oh yeah, I know what my why is. But then when we start challenging it, we find that it's actually much deeper than where they've settled. So keep going until you know what it is and don't give up. Why? Because I am convinced, and I'm going to show you how it will change not just your life, but it's going to change your business. So that's your next takeaway question. What is your why? You have one, it's powerful, and it's driving what you love and what you hate. And when you integrate it into your business, it will change the way you do it. So what is it? Okay, so let's jump ahead. Let's say, guess what? I got my why. Now what? Well, there are two primary places where you can apply your why once you've found it. Obviously, one is your personal life and one is your professional life. I'll talk briefly about the personal, but this is a business call, so we're really going to focus on how do you apply your why to grow your business. On the personal side, I guarantee you know somebody right now, or you've met somebody recently who is very quote-unquote successful, either in business or with family or a high-paying job, high-level position, who's actually really unhappy in their life because what's going on around them doesn't align with what's going on inside of them. When I find that, that tells me that their life is not aligned to their why. The happiest and most satisfied people in the universe, and this is true, are the people who have been able to align as much of their why, as much of their personal and professional life to their why. Why? Because when you're doing more of those things that you really love, that you are passionate about, that you are uniquely wired to do, it just translates to a more fulfilling life. So that's on the personal side, but I want to focus on the professional side because when you leverage your why in your business grows. And I'm going to show you how to do that. We're going to talk specifically about how you leverage this in your sales and your marketing. That's why you're here. At least I hope that's why you're here. Hopefully nobody's on the wrong call. So, okay. So remember what we said that you need to do in order to become an emotional buy. You have to paint a vivid, emotionally compelling vision of how your products and services deliver your customers from pain or bring them some kind of pleasurable experience, something that's memorable enough to them that they'll want to buy you, and then you have to deliver on that promise. Well, that's great. How do you create that vivid and emotionally compelling vision? We'll talk about 3 different places where you can create any message. All of our messages come from one of 3 places. I call them your message centers. It's a place where you craft all of your messages. Remember that for the purposes of reviewing these, what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a vivid and emotionally compelling vision. That's the purpose, that's the point. So the first message center is the brain. Obviously, messages that originate in your brain include logic. They include the facts and the features and the benefits and all the things that we've already really talked about. And messages that you create in the brain cause your listeners to think. When you're using brain messages, you'll hear things like, oh, I need to think about that, or you know, that's good, let me get back to you. Let me think about that. Let me check on some other things. Those are brain message responses. So think back to our story that we led off with about the licensed massage therapist. When she told me about her technique is, it's 100% true that very few licensed massage therapists use that particular technique, and that differentiates her from 95% of the other licensed massage therapists. The fact is, that's a brain message. And if you tell me about your technique, you've brought me to my brain and away from the pain and pleasure center, and now I'm going to be comparing your technique to other people's techniques. The truth is I don't really care about technique, but that's where you took me, so I feel like I need to do a little bit more research about techniques and which one is right for me, and now I'm buying from the brain. So that's not where you want to create your vivid and emotionally compelling vision. Not that that's a bad place to create messages, it's just not where you want to create this message. So your second message center is the heart. Now, your messages that originate from the heart, these are your These are your emotional, your passionate, your energetic messages. These messages cause your listeners to feel something. Like, you might get a response like, oh yeah, I want that. Or, ooh, that would definitely help me. Or, yeah, that's a good idea. I could use that. Now, you're getting closer. It's closer to creating a vivid and emotionally compelling vision. But while it's close, your heart messages are persuasive, but they're not as emotionally compelling as your messages that originate in your why. So this is not where you want to be crafting messages for this purpose. Again, not a bad place to craft messages, but not where you want to be creating your vivid and emotionally compelling vision. Where you want to do that is your third message center, which is your why. Messages that you create from your why are powerful. These are non-negotiable messages. These are unshakable and instinctual awarenesses that you have, beliefs that you have, things that you are able to convince others about. You're able to convince them simply because of the power and it flows out of you. No one can argue with you because it's not going to work. They're not going to be able to shake you from this belief. When you move from your why, when you create messages from this place, it causes your listener to act. Now, what do I mean by act? I mean it causes them to choose. It causes them to decide, I agree with you, or I disagree with you. You might hear things like, ooh, I need that. That's very different from I want that, or that would be a good idea. You hear, oh, I need that. You get me. This guy understands me. This woman totally knows me, and we've never even spoken. Why? Because you have connected with me emotionally from your why. Now, if that's where you want to create your vivid and emotionally compelling vision, then what you've got to do is you have to turn your why into what's in it for them. Because keep in mind, your why is your why. It's your purpose. It's what you are wired to do. It's what you are passionate about doing. It has nothing to do with anybody else other than you. So how do you turn your why into a powerful, vivid, and emotionally compelling vision of what using your why will translate to for the other person? So with your why in hand, using that as your starting point, figure out what is that promise of pain avoidance or that pleasure gain that you will deliver to somebody when you execute your why, when you're living out your why, when you're moving from your why, when you're doing your why, and then paint that vivid and emotionally compelling vision of what's in it for the other person. So here's a question, and then I'm going to show you what this actually looks like. Do your sales and marketing messages originate in your head, your heart, or your why? Because the most effective sales and marketing starts with your why and crafts it into a promise of a better future for the person hearing it. Remember, your why is only half of the story. That's about you. What about them? I mentioned that this is my why. If I just said this to people, it's not compelling enough. It doesn't tell anybody what's in it for you. This is all about me. This is what I'm passionate about. So here's what I did. First thing I did is I threw away my elevator speech, and that's what I'm imploring you to do. Instead of saying, I'm a business coach, and I've got 20 years of experience, and I've got an MBA, no one cares about that. That's the price of entry to be a business coach. I started saying, I'm a business coach, and I believe there is greatness inside every single person. But I also know that more often than not, each of us is the single biggest reason why we don't achieve it. So what I do is I work with people to unleash that greatness. I give them the tips, the tricks, the techniques, the accountability, the belief, the encouragement, the kick in the rear end, that greatness, to believe it, to see it, to connect to it, and unleash it. I work with people to figure out how are they holding themselves back? What are the obstacles that are in their way? And how do they systematically start removing those obstacles to unleash their greatness? When I did that, suddenly The people in the room who connected to that, they weren't thinking, oh, I could use a business coach. I could really use to grow my business. They were thinking, I need that. I don't believe that I can do it. I hold myself back all the time. I need that. Now, there were other people in the room who thought, I don't get it. And that's great. They're not the right customer for me. That's what I'm asking you to do. Take your why, be passionate about it, and turn it into a what's in it for them. And when you do that, the person in the room who hears it, who is an ideal customer for you, will say, I need that. So here's your question. What is that vivid and emotionally compelling vision of how your why will impact your clients? That's your last takeaway question for today. Let's talk about why this works, how a why actually sells, because it does. First and foremost, instead of teaching people about what you do, your why will touch people in that pleasure and pain center in the way that needs to happen for you to become an emotional buy and for them to actually purchase. That's not me saying it. That's the National Association of Sales Professionals telling us. They did all the work. You can't teach people about what you do. You got to touch them. Change 2 letters. Change that E and an A to an O and a U. Stop telling them what you do because no one cares. Touch them, and they will want what you have. Second reason why your why sells is it's unthreatening and authentic. No one likes selling themselves. Everybody hates sales. I hate the fact that I have to sell what I do to make a living. I wish it would just sell itself. This does that for me, and this will do that for you. You can stand in a room and say, this is what I believe. This is what I'm here to do for you. This is what I'm passionate about. And then after you sell that vision, you have to deliver to become an emotional buy and not an impulse buy. But when you sell from your why, it's not pushy, it's not an inauthentic sales pitch, greasy, sleazy, sales pitchy kind of approach. It doesn't turn anybody off. It's very genuine. The other reason it sells is because it won't sound scripted or salesy. You don't have to script something that you just know in your DNA, that is just the essence of who you are. Everything I said before about the tips and the tricks and I have never written that down. It just flows from me because it's in my core. I believe it. I know it. In fact, here's my challenge to you. Don't script your why. Don't script that vision, that emotionally compelling vision, because when you script it, you'll be tempted to memorize it. And when you memorize it, you're moving it out of your why and into your head. You're putting it into your brain. And now, when you're in that room, you're going to start thinking, what do I say first? Oh, now I say this. Now I say this. Now it's scripted. It's not going to flow out of you. It's going to be very salesy. It's going to be very, very sales pitchy. So don't script it. Just speak from the heart. Speak from your why. The other reason it sells, the other reason this works, is because your why inspires, moves, and connects people to you in an emotional way. It just does. It also will distinguish you from everybody else in the room in 2 ways. First, this helps answer that very first question that we asked, which is, how are you different from everybody else in your industry who does the same thing you do in the market you do it in? Well, the answer is your why. It's not what you do, it's why you do it. That's one way that you are different. That's how I'm different from every other business coach, is I'm really focused on unleashing greatness. That's it. The second way this distinguishes you from everybody else in the room is everybody else in the room is still giving an elevator pitch. You will stand out because people will hear, ooh, this is different, this is weird, this is unusual, I can't put my finger on it, but I liked that. And isn't that the point of networking? Isn't that the point of meeting people, is you got to find a way to stand out. This is a way to do it. And the last reason why this works is because there are people in the room who desperately need what you have. And this message will be compelling enough, they will finally hear a compelling enough message to know that you are the only possible person who can help them. And I'm going to talk about this briefly on my last slide. One final thought, and I'm going to come back to that point that I just made. Your why will not only make you money, but your why is going to save you money as well. And I'm going to tell you how. not only will your why connect with the people in the room who desperately need what you have, but as I kind of alluded to earlier, when I move from my why, there are going to be some people in the room who go, I don't get it. Like, that's weird to me, or that's just odd. That's not only okay, that's a great thing. And here's why, and here's how this saves you money. If you think of it this way, in a room of 100 people, more than likely at least 75 of those people are never going to buy from you. They're not your ideal client. And you know that going in. That leaves, on a good day, really on a great day, that leaves 25 people in that room of 100 as prospects, people who might, if you can create a compelling enough reason, might be interested in doing business with you. The problem is, none of them are wearing name tags that say ideal customer or not ideal customer. So you have no idea who those 25 are. You have no idea who the 75 are that simply are not ever going to do business with you. In fact, some of them might do business with you, but you really don't want to do business with them. So what we've been taught to do is use an elevator speech to go in and educate everybody on what we do. Teach them what we do. Don't play it. Don't go all in. Kind of, play it professional. Talk about the benefits, the features. Give everybody a little bit of something, and the 25 people who are interested in what you do will identify with you. The problem is it doesn't work that way. Really, what happens when you play it safe is there are going to be some of those 75 people whose curiosity is triggered by what you do. And that means you are guaranteed to spend time going deeper with some of those 75 people, wasting your time and their time, and they're not the right clients for you because you haven't done enough to eliminate them through an elevator speech. Likewise, the 25 people who really are your ideal customers, who you need to connect to let them know that they are your ideal customer and you are their ideal client, that you are their ideal vendor, they didn't hear enough in your elevator speech to connect with you at a level where they're going to want to learn more about you. They don't know from your elevator pitch how you're different and how you can help them and why they desperately need you. So that means not only are you guaranteed to spend time with some of the 75 people who really you don't want to be spending time with, but you're also going to miss the chance to spend time with some of the 25 because they don't know. You didn't give them enough to know that you're the right person for them. So you just lost business, and you're wasting time with people you don't need to be wasting time with. So what if instead, here's my appeal to you, here's the point of all of this. What if instead, in that room of 100 people, throw caution to the wind, decide not to play it safe, do something different, decide not to play it safe, and lead with your why. Paint a vivid and emotionally compelling picture of how your why will impact the people in that room, how it will impact the people who choose to do business with you. Here's what's going to happen. The 75 people who are not your ideal customers are going to hear enough from that message to go, that's probably not the right guy for me. That's probably not the person that I should be doing business with. I can't put my finger on it, or I just don't get it, or that's weird, or that's odd, or I don't need that. Beautiful. They just saved you time and money. But now look at the 25 who are your ideal customers. By connecting with them at that level, they now understand, you've given them enough to understand that they desperately need to talk to you. They're going to be thinking, this lady gets me. This guy is exactly who I've been looking for. They will not let you leave the room without, they may not even know what to say. I've had people come up and say, they're like, I just feel like I need to talk to you. I don't even really know what to say. I never thought about hiring a coach before. I just connected to what you said. And that's kind of the point, that when you connect with people on that emotional level, when you connect with them from your why, very often they won't even care what you do. They're willing to learn more about it because even though they'd never thought about your products and services before, you've suddenly introduced them to the concept of, if you do business with me, I can fix that for you. I can solve that for you. Bottom line is you can't afford to waste time with 100 people in the room, finding the 25 that you really want to do business with and eliminating the 75. When you lead with your why and you paint that emotionally compelling picture, those 25 will identify themselves for you. And the 75% will self-select out. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. What questions do you have? My hope is that I've given you something to, even something that you vehemently disagree with. I want to know. What questions, what thoughts do you have?
Thank you, Patrick. Yes, we definitely would love to open it up for questions at this time. As I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, feel free to type in those questions in your webinar window. There's a text box in there where you can select, enter the questions, and I will read them aloud and give Patrick an opportunity to answer them.
Beautiful. I'll tell you what, while that's happening, let me go ahead and just give you, again, I'll give you my contact information. Feel free. Anything that either didn't make sense or you want to find out more, you can email me. You can give me a call. Hopefully, if nothing else, even if you disagreed with everything that I said, hopefully you'd hear I believe this. It has revolutionized my own business, and for the clients that I worked with to help identify their why and integrate it into their sales and marketing, it's changing their business as well. And I'm not the only person out there either who is passionate about discovering your why. So if it's something that you are passionate about doing and you just feel like I'm not the right person for you, that's great. Find the right person who is, because I really believe that it will change not only your personal life, but it will revolutionize your business as well.
Looks like we still haven't received any questions yet. Let's just wait a few more minutes.
Okay.
And we'll see if any roll in.
Okay.
All right, we have a comment in our question section. Thank you, Frank, for sending that. He was asking for a YouTube of this, and we will be posting a recording on BBB's website of this webinar, and if anyone would like to see that, we will make sure to send the link or the YouTube link your way.
Let me also, while we're waiting for questions to come in, if I mentioned that I have a small group coaching program for small businesses, you don't have to sign up for that at all. It's one of those things where you really have to be the right fit for that in order for it to work. Any coaching, you need to be ready for it. You need to be the right fit. But if you're interested in just some free resources, if you go to smallbizrocketship.com/kit, you can get, right now, instantly, right after you throw your information in there, I will email you 3 free resources that you can use to help grow your small business. In addition to that, in the next week, you will get one a day. You'll get a free video. I think they're like a minute and a half to 2 minutes long, so they're not overly oppressive, I promise. But it's a video series called The 7 Mistakes That Are Killing Your Small Business. And one of the videos is about not moving from your why. So there's a little bit about there in that, a little bit about this in there, as well as 6 other mistakes that we believe are killing your small business. Now you will see my business partner is in some of those videos as well. So when you open the video and see him, you'll know he has not hijacked my video series. He's part of it. So.
Thank you, Patrick. We have a few questions that have rolled in. One of which is from Susan. Thank you for listening and submitting your question. And it is, how does a business create a why? So you talked about the individual. How do you suggest a business can amplify and work with that idea?
Great question. And that can be a little challenging because, especially if you're talking about a business that is owned by more than one person. So in a solopreneur, to be honest, I believe in a solopreneur business or a business with one owner. I believe that business owner's why is the business's why. That really is why you're in existence, with rare exceptions. It becomes a little more complicated when you have partners or when you have a conglomerate, and there it then becomes asking each person to put on their company hat and answer the question, why do we exist? Not what is our purpose as a company? And I give you an example. I'm working with a client right now that has 3 partners, and each of them is, we're working individually to discover their own personal why, but as a company, when we come together as a team to try to figure out what is this company's why, they remind themselves to put on the company hat and not just think, what's in it for me, but why do we exist as a company? How do we want to, what's our purpose? And what I love is they came to, rather quickly, they came to a really compelling why, and that is, they said, our absolute purpose as a business is to be unlike every other business in our industry in the universe. Now, you might think, well, I know that's kind of the point. We're all doing that. Yeah, but it was at a different level for them. They were so passionate about it that they immediately started looking at their compensation. They started looking at everything, even the front entry to the building, wanting to make sure that if you walk into that building, you feel like this is the weirdest place I've ever been at in this industry because I've never experienced this before. I might have experienced this in other industries, but no other company like this exists, and that's their why. So it's just about looking at answering those questions with the company hat, with the team hat, reminding each other, why do we exist as a company, not me personally.
Fantastic. Thank you, Patrick. We have another question from Scott. Thank you, Scott, for listening and submitting your question. And it is, how long did it take you to find your why, Patrick?
That's a great question. For me, I did it on my own, and I did it before I even knew that this was a direction that my business was heading. I did it because I really was trying to figure out how can I be different. Like I said, when somebody asks me, why should I hire you over every other business coach in the universe, I didn't have an answer. So I did it on my own, and it was a lot of self-reflection and using a lot of those same questions, and it took me about 3 months. I have to admit, though, I wasn't vigilant about doing it every day, and maybe that was a good thing. Sometimes when you get really frustrated, my encouragement, when you get really frustrated trying to discover your why, do what you know you should do. Some people use their frustration to propel them forward. If that's the case, then if you're frustrated, keep at it. Some people know that when they get frustrated, they just stop thinking clearly, so then stop thinking about it, walk away, and come back to it. For me, it took about 3 months, but man, I knew it when I knew it, and yeah, I mean, it literally made sense of everything that I have ever done in my life. It made sense of jobs that I loved. It made sense of jobs that I hated. Something else that I have learned, and here's my encouragement for you, keep this in mind. Your why does not start at 8 in the morning and end at 6 at night. It's not just your why Monday through Friday. Your why, if it's encoded into your DNA, it's who you are at night, it's who you are on the weekends, it's who you are in the relationships that you're in as a wife, as a husband, as a father, as a daughter, as a son, in your hobbies. So don't just limit yourself to why do I do what I do in my business. Be thinking, what am I passionate about in all phases of my life? And if chase rabbits down rabbit holes, because you don't know where an answer is going to lead you. The craziest answer that you have might actually get you really, really close to discovering your why.
Fantastic, and that is actually a really good segue into our last question that we've received, and it's from Dennis. Thank you again for listening and submitting your question. And it is, you mentioned that you've been a coach for 20 years. How has your why developed? So you talked about finding it and how that's an ongoing process. So how has yours developed? And then did you always know that you had it? Is it something that you're constantly learning, or did you know from the get-go?
Great questions. Thank you, Dennis. So how my why has developed, I would say since I've discovered it, which was only about a year ago. When I say discovered it, I named it. Only about a year ago, it really has, I've become far more intentional about it and far more aware that that is my why. And it's interesting, I catch myself now in not just in business, but really in all aspects of my life going, oh, this is me doing my why, which really brings a great level of satisfaction. It's like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Like I'm where I'm supposed to be, when I'm supposed to be, doing what I'm supposed to do, and that's a great feeling. Prior to that, I've been doing this my whole life. I have been a business coach my whole life, but I've been helping. I've always been the encourager. I've always been the person to say, look, I get it. So here's where you are, but that's not where you need to stay. Let's talk about where you want to be and how do we help get you there. I've always done that, but I didn't have a name for it until I sat down to say, why? Why do I do what I do? And once I was able to name it, it really made sense of everything that I've, as I said, it helped me figure out that's why I'm always in that role. That's why people come to me when they're at that low point, which sometimes I found frustrating, but since I've uncovered my why, since I've named it, it's like, wait a minute, this is what I'm supposed to do, and it brings a whole different level of satisfaction doing it. So it really has, it's not a new why. I've always had it, but I've only named it for about a year, and it's just made, it really has made my whole life more satisfying than it's ever been.
Great, thank you. We have one more that just popped in, and that is from Dennis again, and he was just saying thank you.
Thank you. I'm always grateful when there are questions at the end of the webinar because it means you haven't fallen asleep. So that's a good thing. I appreciate that.
It was a very interesting topic, very exciting to hear. I think anyone that is taking on a business, starting their own business, or maybe trying to evaluate the business that they already have and what to do, it seems like a great framework. So thank you, Patrick. I'm going to go ahead and release this as our end all of the webinar. Thank you all for participating, listening, submitting your questions, and a big thank you again to Patrick Lyons for being our presenter.
Well, and Allie, thank you, and thank you to the Better Business Bureau for not only the opportunity to do this, but also for bringing all of us great content every month. We really do appreciate it. We're all benefiting from it.
You bet, and feel free, anyone on the webinar, to contact BBB with any further questions. And the number to do that is 206-431-2227. Thank you, and have a good day.
Fantastic. Thank you.